Okay, go ahead.
Cool.
Go ahead. Yeah. No.
Well, good evening. Thank you for coming and sharing this beautiful early fall evening with us. Getting a little worried at about 10 to 6 when there was only one person here. Oh my God, I lost to the weather. But no, good to see that you're here. Unbelievable. It's the last meeting already. This month flew by. Anyone remember what we talked about last week? Invasives, and it was a pretty gloomy, no informative. It was a little depressing at the end by the time we got through all these things that are coming in to get us. And now we follow that up with all kinds of health problems that trees can have. But hopefully we'll get through what we can do to mitigate problems, because they're going to pop up. And how do we mitigate problems we may have with some of our forested friends? So I'm going to get started with a little identification. We have two common woodland shrubs here. One is called alternate leaf dogwood, and then the other one is leatherwood, which is sometimes referred to as moosewood. Why is it called moosewood? I've heard a lot of different variations on that theme. I've heard anything from, well, moose like to eat it. Another thing that I've always thought the reason it was called moosewood, is anyone familiar with leatherwood in the forest? Yeah, the growth habit of leatherwood, it's a fairly low growing shrub, and its branches tend to me, they look like moose antlers. They kind of tend to be very palmate. They go out. They don't grow up as much as out. So, two woodland shrubs. What's the best way to tell dogwood from moosewood? Anybody?
One barks and the other one.
By its bark. After 100 years of forestry, that's the best forestry joke we've been able to come up with. So I'll pass around this little sprig of leatherwood or moosewood. Another interesting thing about it is the reason it's called leatherwood is because it's very, very pliable. You do this with most things, it would break or bend much harder. It's very, very pliable, leathery, called leatherwood. It's a very good indicator of high quality soils, site, something you'd probably expect to find in a good site that for northern hardwoods, sugar maple and such.
So how tall is it?
Usually it only grows to be about anywhere from maybe 2 feet to, I would say the tallest, maybe 5 to 6 feet. I've never seen one much bigger than this. It's a fairly low growing shrub. Okay. So some signs and symptoms to look for, or our learning objectives tonight are learning signs and symptoms to look for within our tree, either individual trees if they're in your yard, or within our forest, if we're talking about a more larger landscape. Identify some common forest health issues here in Rusk and Sawyer counties, and learn management options and who do you contact if you have a forest health issue. So, in order to be able to know if your forest is unhealthy, what do you have to know as a baseline? Good, what a healthy forest looks like. And that can sometimes be tricky. Because it goes, when we talk about a forest, we're talking maybe more than just the trees themselves, as we'll talk about here in a bit. But if we have a healthy forest, we have a diversity of native plant species. We're going to have a wide variety of trees, bushes, shrubs, herbaceous ground cover plants. That's why last week we were talking about invasives. One of the problems with invasives is it really starts to cut down on the diversity within our landscape. Tree spacing appropriate for the forest type. So how are the trees arranged? And then how structurally complex is your forest? Do we have all just one size tree or multiple different age classes of trees? Healthy forests are going to make your forest less susceptible to pests and more resilient to damage. And we'll see examples of these as we go through it. So. Healthy or non-healthy? Raise your hand if you want to take a shot. Or I gotta start calling on people. And I will call in. Anybody want to take a shot? Is this healthy or unhealthy? Okay, why?
Well, you got mixed with tall trees and you got enough light coming through with this, some undergrowth and not dominated by buckthorn, which has been my belief.
Okay. So it might be relative.
Yeah.
Compared to your woods, this might look healthy. And they might have got a different take.
I'd say unhealthy, not a lot of diversity.
Good. Not much diversity there. Especially not much diversity where? Yeah, the ground layer is a lot of people. I've been in woods with people on forest walkthroughs where they look at this landscape and they look at it and they say, wow, this looks kind of nice. You know, I got this nice carpet of grass and I could see, I put my deer stand here and I could shoot 150 yards if I had to. Yeah, I would say this forest scene here, and again, we're only seeing one little snapshot here, one little picture, but there's some things in here that make me look at this and say, this might not be so healthy. So this grass isn't really grass. It's Pennsylvania sedge. And Pennsylvania sedge is a invader of forests that grows and grows very thick patches like that. So thick, in fact, that it can interfere with other plants and regeneration of trees taking place. And so that is a problem in this stand because it looks like, for the most part, they look like hardwood species around it. So it's taking place under a hardwood stand. It's going to be hard to get any kind of real good hardwood regeneration going in there. What's another thing that could be unhealthy about this? Could be leading to the problem with the Penn sedge, and it's in the picture. Yeah. That's most likely, I would say, a deer trail. And that might have a good reason why there's so much Penn sedge there. Deer, in high areas of deer where they really browse things to death, they just basically give a chance for the Penn sedge to take root and take hold because deer don't eat Penn sedge. And so even though Penn sedge might provide good habitat for some other species of little rodents that like to hide in it, deer don't like to graze on it, eat it like unfortunately, they don't like eating that. So that's growing like gangbusters there. So yeah, I would say looking at that, that's an unhealthy northern hardwood stand. Oh,
Sorry.
How about this one? Another northern hardwood stand. Anybody want to take a shot at that?
A little more diversity.
Good. A lot more diversity of what?
Diversity of age and diversity of species.
Very good. We got a lot of diversity going on there. Age, different size class of trees. Where else is there diversity? You look down here on the bottom, we've got young trees, we've got ferns, we've got a variety of plants that are growing there. So I would agree. That looks like a pretty healthy northern hardwood stand. I think I marked that one right. So that's probably why it's healthy. No. Actually, we did mark this one as a crew here. This is up in the Blue Hills. How about this one? Anybody want to take a shot?
Looks like it could be thinned.
Okay, good. It looks like, and again, we're only looking at one snapshot here, but from this snapshot, it looks like the spacing of the trees is pretty dense, and so it may be in need of a thinning. The trees themselves might look healthy, what we can see of them, we can't see their crowns. Whether this forest is healthy or not would maybe depend on what exactly is all this green stuff. I've been on a lot of forest walkthroughs with people where we walk through their property and they're like, oh, I've got all this young trees coming underneath here. And guess what they are? Well, if not buckthorn, right away we'll get them out of the way. Prickly ash and buckthorn. But ironwood, musclewood, is that a good future forest? No, but a lot of people, really don't know. They just see something that looks like a small tree growing underneath their big trees. And oh, we got a future forest coming here. Well, you don't. So it would depend what exactly all that young sapling size green stuff is. Here's some swamp hardwoods, healthy or unhealthy. Again, you can't see much other than the boles of the tree, but. Anybody want to take a stab?
Not much browse.
Okay, there ain't much there for to eat. What species of trees are all almost? Yeah, what kind of ash?
Black.
Yep, they're all black ash and they're ash. So is that stand healthy? Well, it might have been for most of its life, but for right now, and we'll talk more about this coming up, I would say this stand is on the downward slide of being healthy. It probably is going to be unhealthy real quick because of
Emerald ash.
emerald ash borer, among other things, as we're going to find out. So I would say that's swamp hardwood stand. That's why we're a little bit nervous managing, because we know that the clock is ticking on these stands and we need to somehow get in and harvest them. Last one with healthy, non-healthy.
Garlic mustard, isn't it?
Okay. Yeah. Again, if you just look at the trees, it might be, oh, it looks okay. But yeah, if we look at the plants underneath, that's all solid garlic mustard. And like we talked about last week, maybe there'll be solid garlic mustard for 5 years, and then maybe the solid garlic mustard will mostly go away. May not. But in this state, in this shot, it's not a real healthy situation. Actually, I got one more. Red pine, is that healthy? What went wrong with this stand?
Wasn't thin.
Yeah, they forgot to thin it. So it was 2023 when we had that ice storm. Couple of different stands I know of were just like this. They were trees that were this big around and 55 feet tall, and they got just bent right over. So yeah, that's why it's important to do management and keep your trees healthy. These trees, though they might, some people might look at that and say, "Oh, it looks pretty nice." It's an unhealthy state for a red pine plantation. Healthy or not healthy? Could go either way here. I mean, a lot of what's left, the trees might be healthy. They might be fine. They might straighten out here. This is right after a windstorm. The standing trees might be okay. What's the unhealthy part here is all these down trees. Because as we're going to learn here in a little bit, down red pine can be a problem because that can lead to infestations of beetles that could then make the other residual standing trees unhealthy. So again, you want to look at the whole picture. Again, we're just looking at little snapshots here, but yeah, if the whole stand looked like this, is it healthy? No, because we got to get that salvage done to get a lot of that wood that's laying on the ground out of there. But actually what's left standing, yeah, they might be fine. Is this healthy or unhealthy?
Well, I would say it's healthy. I'm not.
Good. Why, Steve?
Because you need to have a clear cut on certain types of timber to get them to regenerate.
Good. This is up on the Chequamegon National Forest. I would argue that this stand over here, the residual, what you can see left standing in the corner, is more unhealthy than what's standing here, what you see here. Because this was coppiced or clear cut. That over there is standing 65 to 70-year-old aspen that's slowly just dying out. And guess what's coming underneath? Balsam fir and hazel, so thick you can barely walk through it. So as a healthy forest, yep, I'm with Steve. I know that if I cut this, the next year it's going to look something like that. Now we've got a healthy regenerating aspen stand. And 15 years later, it's going to be a lot of sapling aspen coming back. So completely healthy. So forest management is a tool that we use or we have in our quiver to help forest health and make sure that our trees stay healthy. And we do that through, periodic thinnings if the species demands that. Not all, we don't thin aspen stands generally. But if you have a hardwood stand or a pine plantation, as we talked about, periodic thinnings is gonna keep your forest healthy. Thinking about rotation age, go back to that aspen. If you know your aspen in your woods is at 50 or 55 years, you might want to think, yeah, it's time we get this thing cut before all our aspen starts dying out, especially if you don't have any plan B in your forest. We have a lot of habitats here in Russ County where we have a lot of aspen in the overstory, but few other species of trees and really nothing else coming in underneath. The soil types really want aspen to grow there well. And so thinking about that rotation age of that aspen, that hey, maybe it's time we cut this. It's getting old. It's getting towards the end of its life. Species selection, deciding if we're going to introduce or plant trees, what types of species do we want to put out there on the landscape? Tree selection there, we're talking about individual just trees as we're marking to thin a stand. Snag and log retention, because again, we're thinking of this as a healthy forest. Those things are going to play important roles in for the wildlife that live there. And then that log, falling to the ground again provides wildlife habitat and also nutrient recycling. And then if something were bad to happen, a windstorm or an ice storm or something, doing some sort of salvage cut to again put that kind of reset that stand back to a healthy state. So how do we diagnose problems? Well, first thing that's always helpful is to know what type of trees you have. And how many people think they're pretty comfortable knowing when they look at their trees what they got growing there? Okay, yeah. I think most people are. Yeah. It kind of looks like a maple leaf, so it's some kind of maple. Was it a red maple, a sugar maple? I'm not 100% sure. Some kind of oak, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, knowing what kind of trees you have is important. Signs and symptoms. Being able to see when something's wrong with your trees. And again, that goes back to that healthy. You may know what a healthy tree looks like. So when you start to see some other things going on, leaf discoloration, leaves falling, cankers, whole wide things of problems that trees might get. Get a tree ID book if that helps you identify the trees. That's a good place to start. Or do a forest walkthrough with your local forester. And that's a good way to learn what trees you have on your landscape. Visual cues. These are the symptoms. So this is the way the tree is going to respond to some sort of insult that's thrown at it. Maybe the needles are turning red. Maybe the leaves are yellowing or wilting. Something isn't right. Those leaves should be green in July, and all of a sudden they're turning, yellow. Something's wrong. Causal agents. What are the signs? Might see an insect crawling around in that tree. Now, maybe that insect has nothing to do with anything. Maybe it does. Fruiting body, if it's some sort of I want to say mushroom, but not mushroom, but fungi. Thank you. Cankers, tunnels, missing leaf tissue. There's signs out there that we can see that'll tell us we've got problems. So again, some of the symptoms. Do we got leaves curling up? Do we got needles turning brown? The trunk, is there's a white pine. What's probably going on with this one? Could be a variety of things, but this is a good sign of pines get a bad disease now since the early 1900s. Blister rust. And a lot of times that's exactly what it'll look like. Sap oozing out like that. This is pretty classic emerald ash borer. These are, Pat talked about it back when he was giving his presentation. These are called epicormic branches. We were just down in Eau Claire last week, and you look at the ash trees down there, and they all look just like that. The crowns are completely dead, and they got all kinds of green growing along the bole of the tree. Problems with the roots. Again, we don't know 100% sure that's the cause there, but that could be a reason that spruce is all brown. or balsam, hard to tell from here. Or got a tip curling there, and we'll talk about roots and ways we can avoid that if we're planting the trees. Symptoms. If we see dead leaves in the lower canopy, it's most likely fungal in nature. And we've seen a lot of that this year. We've seen a lot of it, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, 2 years ago, I believe it was. Especially when we get warm and damp weather, it's just a good breeding ground for fungal spores. And a good one that we get that there's often outbreaks of is one called anthracnose, which hits several different species of trees around here. And all of a sudden the trees start getting little black spots on them, which turn yellow, and eventually the leaves really, get infected and look bad. It's usually starts in the lower part of the canopy and works its way up. It may not go all the way to the top, but usually starts on the lower branches close to where the fungal spores are, and then they kind of spread upward. If we got needles, all the dead stuff's up on the top of the tree, then that might suggest that either it's a larger wilt problem, the fungus is attacking this systemically, not allowing nutrients to get to the top of the tree. Or it could be an insect defoliator maybe, or it could be some type of root damage. And that, this happens a lot with people with yard trees. All of a sudden they put in a new garage or they do something to their landscape, or all of a sudden they disturb the roots in their building, and then all of a sudden their tree starts showing signs that something's wrong. When I was in college, I worked for a tree trimming and removal company down in southeastern Wisconsin, and our boss had to go look at a job in northern Illinois. Somebody with a lot of money built this house with a courtyard in the middle. It was totally surrounded with a courtyard, open courtyard in the middle. It had this great big giant bur oak in it. Well, guess what happened 2 years after they built the house? The bur oak died. And so we were called down there to now get this oak out of there. And how do you do that? I don't know. Because our boss didn't take the job. Because I don't know how you get an oak out of there. You almost need a helicopter. Okay. Some other symptoms. If trees are dying in pockets, then again, there's something more going on there than just a single individual tree. So it's probably some type of infection, and a good bet, especially in pine, is some sort of fungal root infection. But bark beetles can lead the same sort of visual cues. And those two, as we're going to find out, often work together. The fungal root infection stresses the tree, and the beetle actually finishes it off. So, another signs you might see when you're walking around out in the woods are fruiting bodies. This is a real common one on aspen trees. It's called Phellinus canker, and very common. It's a white rot. It's rotting the tree inside, and that's what you see as the fruiting body. So you have a tree that's got a whole bunch of those on it. That's a tree that's in a state of decay or decline. And so as you walk through your stand in your aspen and you see a lot of that, those trees are not, they're not on the upward trajectory. They're rotting from within, basically. Insect tunnels, so if you see this either inside or outside the bark, it might mean something. It might mean absolutely nothing at all. This might be secondary. If you all of a sudden a tree is dead in your land and you peel back some of the bark and you see this, that might not have anything to do with what killed the tree. That could be secondary. Insects came, and there's all kinds of insects out there doing stuff. Same with these exit holes. If you look at tree bark at some point, you're going to see all kinds of little holes and things in a lot of trees. Not everything is being a problem. There might have been an insect there, but it didn't really cause any problems. If it's the right insect, it might on the right tree. So our big health issues that we're going to key in on tonight is oak wilt, two-line chestnut borer, emerald ash borer, red pine pocket mortality, and the counterpart, the one that often goes with them, bark beetles. So let's start with oak wilt. Has anyone had oak wilt on their property?
Down in Eau Claire we do, yep.
Okay,
And they'll just die like within a week, all of a sudden they're dead,
yep,
dead leaves. And like, well, and how you stop it? Because it's this oak tree. And then the next summer it's this oak tree, and then it's, I don't know, we cut them down, but they just keeps on going.
yep, and we'll talk about that, yep. As Ken just kind of alluded to, it's a little bit of it's almost unbelievable to watch happen because you can have a tree that looks completely healthy in June and July, and then all of a sudden, sometime in July, it just starts going. And often within a month or two, in the oaks in the red oak family, they go from perfectly leafed out trees to dead in a very short period. Like I said, about a month or two, they're dead completely. Normally what's going to happen with oak wilt, and one of the things you'll notice, the leaves are going to start not only turning colors, but they're going to start dropping quickly. And again, that's unusual for the middle of summer. So oak wilt is caused by a fungus. The fungus grows through the infected tree's water conducting system, causing the tree to wilt and die. And again, it's always going to start, or normally start wilting the furthest away from the roots, up towards the top of the tree. Not always, but usually. That's where you're going to first start notice it flagging. Pretty similar to those that remember when Dutch elm disease came through. It's kind of the same type of fungal wilting disease. The oak wilt is introduced to an area by sap-feeding beetles that carry the oak wilt spores to fresh wounds. So that's how it travels long distances spatially. But once it's in your stand, it can travel from tree to tree much more efficiently through the roots, as we'll see here in a second. So it's the life cycle of the beetle that really is the basis for our oak wilt seasonal restrictions. So this is the life cycle of the oak wilt. We've got an oak over there that was killed by oak wilt the previous year. So this tree was alive the previous June. It died and it stood there over winter. And then what happened is the following spring, a spore pad is going to form under the bark of that tree. And the spore pad is a fungal mat. And as that forms, eventually what happens is the pressure allows the bark to crack open. So you get a little excision in the bark. It's open now. That fungal mat basically has the smell of real ripe bananas. It's very aromatic. And so these little, I like to just call them picnic beetles instead of nitolid beetles, they get attracted to that spore pad. They feed on that, and now they're all full of fungal spores. They fly away to another tree, and if that tree, normally they're going to fly to a tree that has some sort of injury to it, as they're cueing in on that sap that's flowing from an injured oak. And so they're going to go to that tree and start feeding on the sap of that oak tree that was healthy, and most likely pass the fungal disease then onto that what was once a healthy tree. At that point now, once this tree is infected, now it through root grafts can very easily spread to surrounding trees. So it's kind of a 1-2 punch, especially in oak stands where you've got many oaks in your forest. If you just have a single 1 or 2 oak trees in your yard, that's one thing. But in a forest, now it's going to be a little bit harder. How do we deal with that? There's that fungal mat I was talking about. So that's forming under the bark of the tree. Causes the tree to split, the bark to split open. And that's the basis for the overland spread. It mostly or most seriously affects members of the red oak family. These are the ones, the reds, the pins, the blacks. Those are the ones, it's a death sentence. If that tree gets oak wilt, it's going to die. It doesn't somehow miraculously survive. This tree will die. The white oak family is a little bit different. The white oaks show differing levels of ability to tolerate oak wilt and still survive. White oak, being the best, they have the best chance of making it. But in general, the white oaks are just going to take, those that will die are going to take longer to die. It's not quite the rapid death sentence that it was with the red oaks, but they still have it. So this is a lot of times what the leaves will look like on the trees. They'll be a mixture of usually green and brown. They'll almost look water soaked. They're partially green. And again, what'll normally happen is they'll die from the inside, the outer part of the leaf in. So this might still be green in here, but the outside will be brown. And like I said, these will fall off the tree midsummer, July, August. All of a sudden your leaves are raining down. That's a sign that very good chance it could be oak wilt. Talked earlier about our oak wilt guidelines. The greatest risk for oak wilt to be transmitted is April 15th to July 15th by the beetles. That's when they're most active. And so we strongly suggest you do not do any kind of harvesting. Now, that's our oak wilt meter. I amended it. I always tell people, don't touch your oaks from April 1st to August 1st. Because especially with the weird weather we have nowadays where you don't know, because the beetle becomes active based on thermal degree days. And if we keep getting weather like we have had, where we get so warm winters and springs that warm up much quicker than normal, I would be a little bit hesitant to just start saying, oh, April 15th is the magic day I can get out there. As a landowner, I would think that way. So I would just say, leave your oaks alone from April 1st to August 1st if you're thinking of having any kind of harvest done. Now, for loggers, this kind of starts to get in the way because as we talked about when Pat was doing his presentation, loggers like to have summer wood and summer opportunities to cut. So if you have an oak stand or a stand with a lot of oak in it, and now all of a sudden we're telling them, well, we don't want you in there from April to August. That puts a little bit of dent in their schedule. But if I was a landowner, I wouldn't care about their schedule. I would say, no, I don't want you cutting in my woods anytime during that period.
Yeah, can I just jump in real quick, Ron? So when we first found, I think oak wilt was first discovered in Russ County in 2013, down in the Russ Township. I think it was down along the lake in there. Someone maybe had some firewood that came in. Eventually it got into the county forest, Russ County Forest, and we didn't have cutting restrictions on our timber sales at the time. So the first place it showed up, the county forester got a hold of me and thought maybe they had oak wilt. There was a couple oaks that had flagged, looked like they were dying. So we went out there and looked at it. And sure enough, that sale ended up having, I think it was about 16 or 17 different pockets of oak wilt. And each one of those trees that was dead, that had wilted the previous year and was dead, and that pocket was starting to expand. Each one of those trees had a little bit of damage on it from logging damage. So I'm 100% convinced that by putting in those oak wilt restrictions, you're definitely saving your oak stands from being infected with oak wilt. That, once we had those restrictions in place, we rarely saw that, and definitely not to that extent of oak wilt popping up. It can still come up with various other, windstorms or other agents of, where it's gonna cause an injury to an oak tree, but definitely reduce the amount.
Yeah, the tornado we had in 2017 couldn't have come at a worse time. It came through in May, right kind of in the heart of beetle season. And it tore the limbs off a lot of oaks, damaged a lot of oaks, and it opened them up then to oak wilt. This goes beyond just your forest. You really should protect your trees in your yard, everywhere like that. Any kind of pruning or work you want to do with your oaks. Always just the safest period is always the dormant season. Wait till November and through winter time to prune your oaks in your yard or whatever you're doing, even with your yard trees. But with your forest, as far as harvests go, yeah, stay away from that, late, spring to, most of summer period, because it isn't worth it.
And even beyond the pruning and harvesting, if you cut a live oak tree down, that stump will stay living for a period of time where it could still infect that stump. So if you had to cut a tree down for some reason, you know, I think that picture kind of illustrates it, putting in a wound seal or something on there. Otherwise, just avoid cutting any oak within that April 15th to July 15th period.
Yeah, yeah, if something happens where all of a sudden the UPS truck pulls in your driveway and tears off a limb off your oak tree that's right along the driveway, yeah, you want to cover it with wound paint if it's during that high risk season. So how can we stop it? Well, root trenching can be effective. You do need a root trencher that's going to get down to preferably 4 to 5 feet. So that's going to take a heck of a machine. And in a lot of forested applications, that might not be feasible to do. But if you could do it within a forest situation, it might be a way to go. It's very applicable to people that have many oaks in their yard or like in a city park or something. You could do that, and that could work by cutting those root grafts. Whenever we have an oak wilt tree, though, if we identify that this oak now, when it comes to treating them, we've identified this tree has oak wilt. When we go to treat it now, we have to almost assume that the other trees around them probably have it also. And because if we just cut down the ones that are showing signs of oak wilt, by the time that one shows the signs, it's going to die in a month, and now it's probably spreading it to other trees. So the controlling part gets to be kind of hard, because now what you're going to almost have to do is set up a buffer around that dead oak tree. We're going to go out so far and take even though they might look like healthy living oaks, we're going to cut them all out, because we're have to assume that they probably have it. And that can get hard to do as a yard landowner or in a forest. But if you're at a forest, it's probably the most prudent thing to do.
Cut your losses.
Yeah. Now, how far do you go out? Well, that's going to depend on your soils. And so Bill has attached as one of your resources it's on a link at the DNR website, the extension bulletin.
Yes.
It'll talk about soil types and distance, because the roots are going to travel faster farther through sandy soils, light sandy soils, than dense, heavy soils. It'll be a shorter distance you have to go out in dense, heavy soils. With sandier soils, you're going to have to go out farther. And there's a method to do that. There's a calculation you have to do based on tree diameter and distance to trees. And that's all outlined in that bulletin. So if you have oak wilt as a problem, then you might want to look at that. Another way that has been done, and I believe the county did this on one sale, they had oak wilt. They went in, do I got a picture of it? Yeah. So they girdled the trees, and then they sprayed herbicide in there to kill them, because we girdle the trees so that the tree dies, but then we also herbicide them so that we also kill the root system. They did the same thing. They went out that certain distance from that tree, did this, and then they had a harvest where they came in and harvested them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they set up a harvest then, and they were able to harvest those trees, and they were used. So that's another method that can be used in a woodland setting. Again, you wouldn't do this in your yard probably, but in a woodland setting. So this is just kind of what oak wilt pocket might look like from the air. And it's just going to expand outward until somebody stops squeezing.
Connected outward too.
Okay, and this one is really for saving yard trees. If you have a valuable oak in your yard that you really don't want to lose, you're going to treat it with a fungicide and potentially save it. There's good signs that, if found early enough, it can be successful. This is also used on emerald ash borer to save, but these are just saving, again, basically yard trees. You're not obviously going to do this to all your trees in your forest. I have somebody in Bruce right now that has a big oak. They've had oak wilt in their yard. They don't want to lose this big one, and they're treating it right now. Any questions on oak wilt before we move on? Because this one,
Question, but it's not necessarily pertinent to landowners, but so I know DOT has restrictions on cutting trees, you know. But the towns don't when they're clearing roads and they just wreak havoc with their lawn cutters.
well, we were just talking about that today. Normally, I believe most of the townships do get talked to about it, whether they follow it or not.
Yeah.
I
There's no
mean-
laws against it, so
Right.
we advise them, but
It should be document, I mean, they get money from DOT to clear the right of ways, and that's, you know, what they're saying is we have to do this for safety, but it's a major environmental action. It's the detriment, we all know and see.
Yeah. Yeah, that's way beyond my ability to stop that one. Yeah, we know the same thing, and it sounds like at least the county guys were saying today that a lot of the townships do try to stay out of those oak wilt time periods to do their road clearing work.
But what we see is the power companies coming and cutting my oak trees, that they're near the power lines. And I told them that I don't want them there until after November 1.
Yeah.
We still got oak.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish I could. Two-line chestnut borer is another oak pest that we have. This one now is an insect. Well, the other one had an insect involved, carried it around. This one is the main agent that hurts the tree, is an insect and a beetle and its larva. And we have seen a lot of this in the last few years. This is a pretty common pest of our oaks. And what they tend to strike are trees that are already stressed. And so again, going back to our weather, we have had a lot of stressing weather on trees, specifically in oaks case, some long extended periods of droughts. And that has stressed the oak, and that just makes them much more susceptible to this pathogen. So the two-line chestnut borer primarily attacks oaks. It's going to seek out those stressed or damaged trees. So one example of this is we did a shelterwood harvest up on the county forest, and actually for those of you that drive across Highway 8 to like Rice Lake, just as you're going there where the sand plant is, they did a shelterwood harvest there. I don't know, it's probably been 10, 12 years ago now. But a lot of the residual oaks out there eventually died. A lot of them were dead. And it was two-line chestnut borer. We had a shelterwood up on the county forest. We did the shelterwood harvest. The shelterwood again opens to stand up greatly. So all of a sudden, all these trees don't have all their friends around them all the time. A little bit of a stressor to begin with, and then we had a very droughty, actually 2 periods of extended drought 2 years in a row. And kind of the combination of those two things on that stand, we saw a lot of mortality, a lot of two-line chestnut borer damage and mortality within that stand. And it was just one of those things. It wasn't the shelterwood that killed them. It was the shelterwood just happened to coincide with the drought and stress the trees just that much more. So these guys get in there, and it's not the adult that kills the tree, it's the larva. The larva's in there girdling around on the branches, and the foliage of those invested branches, because they basically over time get girdled, they die, and the leaves turn brown. But unlike oak wilt, the leaves do not fall. The leaves stay up there. And so you'll see a tree holding its dead brown leaves. It's a good chance it could be two-line chestnut borer. Death doesn't occur until after 2 or 3 years. So if you have an oak tree that's a red oak tree that's just got a few dead branches one year, and then the next year it's a few more, and the next year it's a few more. It's not oak wilt. It most likely is this. There might be other agents too, but it's most likely this. And so going back to this picture, this is pretty classic. Most of the tree is still alive and still has got green leaves and it looks okay. This branch is completely dead, it looks like. This branch is partially dead up there. It's kind of a death by 1,000 cuts. Oops, I'm going the wrong one. So, if you have problems with your oak, it's most likely going to be one of those two things. Now, there are other agents out there that it could be in the end, but these are two of the top, they're two on the top of the list, and probably two of the most severe, that these are ones that can actually really kill the tree.
Would you say that two-line chestnut borer is more common than oak wilt here in Russ?
I would say so. They're both common-ish.
Probably more widespread.
It's more widespread, I think, yeah. I think we have both, yeah. And especially with the like I said, just two-line chestnut borer can kind of come and go in waves depending on what is out there stressing our forests. Okay. Boy, we got a lot of good news for you guys.
Give it up.
Well, this one's really bad. Because anyone in here that's been down southern central Wisconsin, even Eau Claire now, it's here, it's coming. We just had our forest health specialist in the office today, Dr. Deff, and he was telling us all this jolly stuff. Emerald ash borer is it's not a matter of when it gets here, it's here. But there is hope. We'll talk about that. Like to leave on a positive. So some of the signs and symptoms. One of the things that you may see on a tree is this is called blonding, or where woodpeckers are working that tree because of the larva inside the tree. So all of a sudden you'll see your ash trees with a lot of woodpecker activity. That's a sign there's something going on there. Another classic sign is that epicormic branching as the tree starts to lose, because again, this tree is basically getting girdled by those larvae in here. This is from a tree up in Sawyer County I just visited last year. This is actually a piece of bark off that tree. This is what the galleries look like. When we looked at this tree, the tree actually looked healthy. Looking at it, it didn't really look like there was much wrong with it. Until we peeled the bark back, because we knew that there was emerald ash borer in this stand. We peeled the bark back on this one and it was just loaded with larvae. So this tree was probably going to be dead within the next year or two. Another symptom from emerald ash borer, they have D-shaped exit holes where the adults emerge from underneath the bark. Now there are other beetles that can have D-shaped holes, so that's not always the causation. But if it's an ash tree and it's got D-shaped holes and epicormic branching and it's dead, probably emerald ash borer. So the larva stage, there's about 3 or 4 of them in this person's hand. That's came out of the tree I'm passing around the bark from. The borer itself, the adult, is pretty small. That's on a penny. And there's some different shots of them, variety of angles. Pat, you know what an emerald ash borer looks like? Would you be able to identify one? Just if you saw one in the woods?
Would I be able to?
Yeah.
It looked pretty. Why is there something that looks just like?
Yeah, I mean, there's a variety of green beetles. So not every green beetle is an emerald ash borer. What I'm saying is you'd want to really take the time. If you find a green beetle at home, don't panic and, run. You might have to look closely to make sure it really is. And if you know a forest health person or an entomologist that can help you identify exactly that, yeah, it's an emerald ash borer beetle.
Are they fast?
Are they fast?
Yeah.
I don't know. I never caught one. I'm still trying to catch one.
used to live in Buffalo County, and I saw something that I thought was, but it, like, I went to catch it and it was gone, so. That's why I'm asking.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
If they're fast or not.
So this is the life cycle of the emerald ash borer. The female lays eggs on the outside of the tree. The eggs hatch and the little larvae bore into the tree. And that's where they're going to spend the next 1 or 2 years, just feeding under the bark and the cambium layer, gobbling up all that good stuff. But as that tree becomes more and more infested with beetles, as we said, ultimately it girdles the tree. And so that tree is going to start dying. It's going to start showing symptoms eventually. Parts of the tree are going to start to defoliate. We're going to get epicormic branching because, again, that tree knows I'm in trouble. I'm hurting here, and it starts sending out other branching just as a survival mechanism. Get more leaves out there because I lost all them up there. I'm going to put more leaves out because I got to keep energy coming in. So it does everything it can to stay alive, but eventually it's probably going to succumb and die. Eventually, after 1 or 2 years, they hatch or they metamorphose into the adult, and the adult bores out of the tree again, and out she goes, ready to spread more emerald ash borer. Emerald ash borer will kill all ash trees that are greater than 2 inches in 3 to 5 years. So once infected, they're not going to make it. And again, if you look at the landscape there, a lot of dead trees out there. Field observation models predict a healthy forest will lose 98% of its ash in 6 years. EAB are greatly accelerated when people unintentionally move firewood in nursery stock. And insecticide treatments can prevent or reverse it, but again, as we talked about, it's really only practical for those ash you might want to be saving in your yard, not on a large landscape-wide level. So, emerald ash borer is going to change the composition of our forests from really major changes to relatively minor changes in composition. You know, if you have a forest that's only got 1% ash in it, losing the ash tree isn't going to be the end of your forest. But if you have a stand like this that I showed you earlier, that swamp hardwoods, that's 98% black ash, the emerald ash borer is going to change that landscape dramatically. Now, take a black ash stand growing in a swampy, wet area. What happens when you kill off the overstory ash trees?
The water comes up?
Good. All those trees are straws sucking water out of the ground, helping keep that somewhat from being a wetland, a swamp. So what's going to follow emerald ash borer once it kills our black ash stands? We don't know. We already know what's happened in other places. Lots of things can jump in. And a lot of times they're not the things we want. Might be cattails, in this case, narrow leaf cattail and invasive Phragmites. If you're lucky, you might get tag alder. At least it's a native. If you're unlucky, bunch of buckthorn, or maybe a witch's brew of a variety of these things. Will we get trees back? Maybe, depending on what kind of seed source you had. If you have red maple and yellow birch or something around there to help maybe revegetate it. But it's, again, we've seen this play out in southern Wisconsin in areas, and it's not a good ending most of the time.
We know where EAB came from.
Where a lot of our pests come from, Asia,
Like in packing wood or something?
Oh, yeah.
It's on the card here.
Is it? Okay.
It says, imported in the wood of shipping crates.
Yeah.
What about canary grass? Does that come in sometimes? Canary
grass, yeah.
If you know you have a tree that has the larvae in it, are you better off cutting it down and trying to burn it, or what's the best way to do it to try to prevent them from getting to the adult stage? Or is there no way to do it?
Well, if you knew that tree was infected, yeah, you could cut it down and burn it. Or just cut it down and peel the bark off.
If you leave it, it's just.
Right, it's a beetle factory. Yep,
Okay to leave it there as a snag?
as a dead tree,
Yeah, just for wildlife.
once it's dead, it's dead. The larva, there's nothing in there for the larva anymore, so.
Makes
But
great.
now it's a dead tree,
Good firewood.
it's good firewood, right? Or a snake.
Do the bugs go after the small diameter ash?
Yeah.
They go after the little ones too.
Yep.
So ash are,
No, in Asia, their ash trees seem to have adapted.
Yep.
So maybe ours will. Huh?
Well, ours will, exactly, and that's good, that's where I was gonna go at the end here with that, and I'm not done with all the problems with ash.
That was the tree to plant.
Exactly, when I was in college, every town was planting ash trees because of the Dutch elm, and now.
Is this the case where if you have a bunch of ash trees that are infected, that you should take out the ones that are still alive around it too?
No. I wouldn't cut anything that wasn't infected, but. I would in that. Unless you have some plan to try and protect those trees, they're probably gonna get it sooner or later anyway, so if they're a valuable tree. I might think about cutting it down, as far as a wood product goes, or, if you had like. Nice, high quality ash saw log like. Yeah, I'd be, that's why we're managing it, that's, when we go out and mark timber now, hardwoods. Our marking guidelines, the first order of removal, the first thing we look at is high risk trees. And, in a lot of our forests around here, ash are some of the most beautiful trees we have, tall, straight, beautiful logs. But now we're looking at those as high risk trees, that they're like the first to go, because otherwise emerald ash borer probably get right.
But they're finding that there is a resiliency out there. I don't know if we can talk about that.
Yeah, so to go along with that, even though we're marking out those valuable ones, we're not cutting every ash tree, because we made that mistake with elm. The old saying is, what killed the elm trees? And a lot of times people jump at, well, it was Dutch elm disease. No, it was us cutting down every elm because we thought every elm was gonna get Dutch elm disease. It's kind of the same thing with black ash, with ash. Yeah, it's already been shown that there's that 1 to 3% of the trees that are gonna make it. And those are the ones we want out there then, because somehow they show either they're very lucky or they show some sort of disposition to be able to ward off emerald ash borer. So yeah, you don't want to cut down every ash just willy-nilly. Oh, we're gonna cut down and get them out of here. But if I had valuable ones, I'd think about it.
If you cut down a 12-inch ash tree that has emerald ash borer, then, and we take the bark off of it, then how long would it still be able to infect other ash trees? Well, you said once it's dead, it can't spread the disease, but if it's newly dead, maybe it could.
If it was newly dead.
If it would still had its bark on, so if you cut down a 12-inch ash tree that has EAP in it, and you leave it, and you take the bark off it, and you're saving it as saw timber, then a year later, is it still likely to spread the disease? Or is it still prohibited to transport it? Or how do you decide how to?
I would think it. Because the larvae are right under this. So if you took the bark off, they're probably not gonna live for very long. And that's kind of like their nursery over there. So
in your diagram, the larvae are like in the tree, but
Yeah.
they're actually in the no
Yeah.
deeper than, right?
yeah, they're right all in the living tissue.
Okay,
Yeah, that's what they're feeding on.
thanks.
Okay. So this one now, the good side with this one is, this one really only affects black ash. Now, some of you folks may have noticed, if you have black ash on your property, they have looked really bad for the last 2 years, and in some places 3 years. They look like something's wrong. A lot of people think, oh, this is emerald ash borer. A lot of the trees look just like this. This is full leaf out for black ash. All they have are these little tufted leaves here and there. Leaves are kind of curled up in bunches. The black ash especially. The extended droughts we had in 2023 in parts of 2024 really hit the black ash, or no, 2022 and 2023 really hit the black ash hard. Because where do black ash live again? Wet, swampy areas. They like to have wet feet. And since they live in wet, swampy areas, their rooting systems tend to be very shallow. So they're very susceptible to droughts. And when that landscape dries up, that is a huge stressor on them. And so they are stressed really bad just because of that. And then this guy comes along. The Cockney ash psyllid. And this silly psyllid sucks sap. And you say that's 10 times. So this psyllid sucks sap and basically causes the leaves to be deformed and defoliate. And that's why all this whole year, our ash trees look like they barely leafed out, the black ash now I'm talking about, looked like they barely leafed out all year. And the same thing was last year, and in some locations even the year before. This, because of the stress of those put on those black ash trees in the swampy areas, this insect took advantage and has really decimated our ash, black ash. And our forest health guy that was here today didn't have much good news for the black ash. He was saying they're really on, because they're fighting drought stress, they're fighting emerald ash borer, and now this one. So they're getting hit from all sides. And there's no solution to this. You can't stop it. But if you have property with a lot of black ash on it, you're going to have a lot of dead trees soon, if you don't already. Officially, we have only found the positive ID for emerald ash borer was down in the village of Sheldon about 2 years ago. We have had no other reported, verified finding of emerald ash borer, but we're all pretty confident it's here, it's around. Okay, last disease is red, well, these last two go together. Red pine pocket mortality. How many people have red pine on their property? This is not a huge problem up here. This is way bigger of a problem in central and southern Wisconsin. But we do have pocket mortality can occur here. It's caused again by a fungus. The pockets usually start out small with just a few dead trees, and then trees that look like they're just not 100% healthy, called fader trees. And then each year, the pocket just gets a little bit bigger. A little, again, sort of like oak will. So the trees that get infected by this fungus are stressed because, again, like the other fungus diseases we talked about, they can't take up water or make defensive compounds like usual, that real heavy pitch, sap. So these stressed trees then, like, again, we already it's a common theme, stressed trees, sort of like us, when we're stressed and really not eating right and running around, and it just makes us more likely we're probably going to get sick, or we might get sick. Makes us more apt to get sick if something's going around. Same thing here. The stressed trees attract beetles, and then the beetles come, and ultimately it's the beetle that finishes off the tree and kills it. So who killed it really? It's a joint effort. These are the bark beetles that get credit for killing the tree. And so they attack trees that are under stress. How does trees get under stress? Well, could be overcrowding, like that one pine stand we showed. Could be drought, flood, other insects, changes in the water table, some kind of wound. That ice storm we had a couple of years back was a good one. So stress trees are more vulnerable because, again, their defense mechanisms are compromised. Healthy conifers produce a large amount of pitch that prevents bark beetle attacks. And extremely large populations of beetles are able to mass attack and overwhelm the defenses of even healthy trees. And that's why it's really important for pine management if you have a blowdown or some type of event, you want to get rid of the wood as quickly as possible. Get it off the property as quickly as possible, especially in the summer months when the beetles would be active. Thinning stand at the proper time to maintain that healthy stand. Again, going back to if we can just keep our trees healthy, a lot of times they can fight off some of these pathogens, especially these type. So that's where forest management really comes in. If you got pine on your stand in your forest, then manage them. Okay, so just some very general silviculture recommendations. Reduce the proportion of ash during regularly scheduled entries, aiming for a species composition of less than 20% ash. And you might even want to go lower than that. But if you have a lot of ash on your property and you're going to have a thinning done, target the ash. As we've already kind of alluded to, consider leaving some of the ash for ecological purposes. You got a big old ash, but doesn't have a log in it, just a big old crookedy tree. Maybe that one's just good to leave on the landscape. Let EAB kill it, and then it's a woodpecker, raccoon denning tree, good for wildlife. It's probably not much use for wood products. Leave it there for other purposes. Actions are going to vary by site, and it's not a one size fits all thing, as we already talked about. If you're talking about a black ash stand and it's very wet, I would be very cautious about just saying, "Oh, I'm going to cut all the ash trees out of there," because we already talked about if 95% of your wood, of your swamp hardwood stand is black ash, and you cut them all out of there, it's probably going to swamp out, and then you'll be dealing with canary grass and Phragmites and some of them other ones we don't want. So yeah, if you got a real wet site, maybe we come up with a different plan, trying to think of ways we can leave some residual trees out there, hopefully enough that will survive and keep that area from swamping out. Maintain your woods in a healthy manner. I'm kind of beating that drum to death. Thin when appropriate, remove storm damage, and just stay on top of your forest. Again, you guys spend the most time out there. As you start to see things, and if you don't know the answers, reach out, and someone will be glad to help you. And then the oak wilt seasonal guidelines. And tell your neighbors about these things, because they may not know. And a little bit of education can go a long ways. Yeah. I'm all done talking about diseases. Somebody get a piece of cake back there. We still got a lot of cake, so that's gotta be eaten up.
I had a question about this oak diseases, this two-line chestnut borer and oak wilt. Are all species of oak susceptible to those diseases?
Well, the two-line chestnut borer will attack any oak. Oak wilt will attack all oaks, but it affects the red oak family, the red, the pin, and the black oaks. It's a death sentence. They will die, no questions asked, in a very short amount of time. The white oak family has a better chance of fighting it off. And above all, the white oaks are the best at maybe being able to survive it.
And does that apply to the two-line chestnut borer too, or not?
What's that?
Are the white oaks more resistant to that as well, or not?
No, because that's more structural.
Oh, okay.
They're gonna feed and kill them because they're basically girdling branches one at a time. That's why I said it's sort of like death by 1,000 cuts.
I had a forest, and one part of it was all red pine, about 15 acres. And the forester recommended I clear cut it. It was was planted in 1989. It got cut about 5 years ago. And he called it red pine decline. Is that the same as what we're talking about here? Or?
I only heard a pocket decline,
Okay.
unless it was, how many acres?
It was 15.
Okay.
And he recommended to cut it all. We did. And
Well, do you remember what the symptoms, or why did he? What did he call?
Tops looked real unhealthy.
On like throughout the stand?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like one big pocket, huh?
Yeah, that's a big pocket,
I wonder if
I'm not sure.
Forester-
I guess.
I mean, I've seen pocket decline in really small, I mean, very small areas.
Right, the only pocket decline I've ever dealt with was, maybe,
Half an acre.
yeah, I was gonna say about, yeah, half acre probably tops. But we don't have a lot of plain around here that,
Well, anyway, it was really hard to go in and reforest that.
well, yeah,
I ended up planting acorns and walnut seeds, because
yeah,
I didn't wanna plant pine again because of the problem. But I think it's coming.
where was that in?
This is in Trumbull County.
Okay, yep. Yeah, they see way more of that down there, the red pine problems.
He brought
We
in,
generally don't have a lot of problems with our red pine up here.
he brought in the area forester and
Yeah.
I agreed on it.
Yep. So there's lots of things that can cause trees problems that are not diseases. So indicators, trees of the same species showing the same symptoms. And again, weather damage increases susceptibility to pests and disease. We kind of already talked about that. Observe local weather patterns. So again, when we have these weird weather events, extended droughts, and some areas up here have been hit worse than others with the droughts. Insect infestations, many times will follow that. Wet years, we might have flooding damage, where we raise the water table enough that you flood trees that don't like having their feet wet. And if they stay wet for a long period of time, trees are gonna die. Up where I go up north near the town of Barnes, there's a lake up there called Pigeon Lake. Basically a sinkhole lake, doesn't have an inlet or an outlet. I was up there in 2017. They got 11 inches of rain in one night. That lake level rose, flooded a lot of cabins, flooded over the road, flooded over Highway N. They had to build that way up. Some of them cabins, because there was no inlet and outlet, and we stayed in such a wet period for so long, the lake level stayed up that there was 3 or 4 of the cabins were this far underwater for 3 years. Guess what happened to a lot of the trees that were around the edge of that lake? Yeah, they weren't used to having wet feet for 3 years, and so they died. So those things happen, and they're out of our control. There's really not much we can do about that. But just notice that again, a lot of times what we're seeing in weather, and we'll see some examples here, shows up. Seen a lot of this in a couple of different years. It was the winter of 2014 for sure, and I can't remember the other one. It was I call it the winter from hell. That was the winter of 2013, 2014. Cold beyond belief. The snow was waist deep on me in the woods. I remember because walking around on snowshoes and fluffy snow, you still sank into the snow, but you were sinking in 2 feet with your snowshoes on. It was totally miserable. You fell over, just getting back up was like got back up, I just went back up to the truck, calling it a day. No, but it was a tough winter. It was a winter from hell. But that was also a winter that lasted way into April, early May. In fact, that year, people were ice fishing on Lake Namakagon. Our family has a cabin up there on the opening day of ice fishing season. Well, you got all this snow on the ground late in the winter. Well, past winter, way into spring, the angle of incidence of the sun is getting more and more. That's reflecting off the snow. Plus, the ground is still frozen. These trees aren't able to take up any kind of water. We had a lot of conifer trees that year browning. I don't know how many calls we got. And our advice was, if there's any green at all left, let it go and see what happens. Some came back, some didn't. But it was definitely an issue. There was another winter in there where it wasn't as bad as that one, but I think it was the winter of 2016, 17. We had another incident of that same thing, a very late snow cover. Frost damage is pretty common for some of our leaves to leaf out. And then all of a sudden we get a late frost in late May, early June, and it kills the leaves. And then they have to re-leaf. Or they have very deformed leaves if the frost damage wasn't complete. Hail damage. Sorry, Pat. That's a sore spot to bring up with Pat. He's had your house got hit with hail, your vehicles,
5 vehicles.
your work truck.
Yeah, 6 vehicles.
And then last year, his wife was down in Eau Claire at something, and that's when they got those hailstorm. No, that was earlier this year.
This year, yeah.
The tennis ball size hail. I'm not meaning to laugh at you, Pat.
Very funny.
It's the irony of it. Storm and wind damage. I'm not sure if this is Oconto County area. We had that derecho event came through in 2019 that hit Barron and Polk County very hard, and then it skipped over to Langley and Oconto counties very hard. I think I talked earlier in this class, or was it a different one, where we were talking about the derecho event that happened up on the Flambeau River State Forest in 1977. Very similar. So those things can happen. There's nothing you can do about it. You got to try and deal with the outcome of it.
One thing I'll say with the hail damage, we've seen it, where the signs might not show up right away. I remember one summer up near Hayward, they had a pretty severe hailstorm went through there. And, you know, damage was assessed. There were trees that were either down trees, the ones that you can see real easily that were damaged, got cleaned up, and then maybe, I don't know, a few weeks later or a month later, all of a sudden, some of the spruce and balsam started to flag, where some of their branches were just starting to brown, and I'm like wondering, like, what is it? What's the cause of that? And it turned out to be damage from that hailstorm that had left a lot of little open wounds on the individual branches, and where it was severe enough, those branches started to die out, and eventually, in some instances, with the entire trees were susceptible to mortality. So just something that these symptoms might not show immediately, but you know, they might start to progress a week, 2, 3 weeks after the damage has been done.
Yep, thanks. This picture is from December of 22 with our ice storm that we had. That's up in the Blue Hills, pretty common sight that year. In my lifetime, I had never seen that happen before. Those trees were bent over for the entire winter. I've seen trees get bent over like that, but eventually the snow melts off them and they pop back up. They stayed like that for the whole winter, and many trees didn't come back from it. Some of them tried to self-correct and straighten a little bit, but there's still visible signs all over the county of that event. Droughts, as we've already alluded to, they happen, and then also that flooding can also affect things. Again, we have no control over any of that stuff. Salt damage along road, you know, so again, if you have properties that border roads, you know, don't be surprised to see damage to trees that are too close to the road and are getting sprayed by salt, or overspray, or just mistakenly, if you misuse a herbicide or pesticide on the wrong application in the wrong area. Bonnie and Mike aren't here today, but there's a soybean field as you're going towards Bruce. On one side of the road, the soybeans are green. On the other side, they're all dead. They've been dead since July. They must have sprayed the field with the wrong herbicide. The whole field's dead. So same thing can happen here with trees. So if you're going to be spraying things, make sure you know what you're spraying and apply them the way you're supposed to.
Ron? Just as a point, you know, the soybean field out there died.
Yeah.
I had the same thing.
Oh.
And they changed the formula on the Roundup, and you had to get the right Roundup.
Okay.
They added more stuff into it from last year to this year. So there's more like for homeowners. And if you bought anything like that, then it wiped it all off.
Killed it all. Yeah. That was unfortunate.
Yep.
Because I was sure they didn't want that to happen. Some other stressors of our trees or outright killers, small mammals, voles and those rabbits and things that like to work at the bases of our trees. Sapsuckers, they leave that telltale sign when they're active on your trees. That obviously isn't good for your tree, makes it very susceptible to a lot of invaders, weakens the tree. A lot of trees will snap off at that point eventually. Deer are a major player in regenerating our forests, especially certain types of forest types. I always like to show this picture. This is a picture of, this is on the Flammable River State Forest. This is an enclosure, exclosure, I'm sorry, 15 feet by 15 feet. Inside, we have hemlocks planted. All these other trees grew up just on their own. They're mostly cherry. There's a few maple trees and a yellow birch in there. This was done in the spring of 2021. So this is 4 years of growth. Outside of that fence, there's not a single, these are all cherry trees mostly with, like I said, some maple in that, and the hemlocks are down here. Outside that fence, there's not a single cherry tree, anything. There is absolutely no trees outside that fence. We planted hemlocks inside the fence and we planted hemlocks outside the fence. This year, one of the hemlocks is now about as tall as me, and most of them are about 3 feet tall. Outside the fence, they're this tall. The minute they stick their head above the grass, they get froze down. This is in an area where if I told 98% of the hunters that hunt up there would tell me there's not enough deer. Without a doubt, they would tell me that there's no deer up here or there's not enough deer. That's what happened. And that's a pretty pointed example in an area where there is a very modest deer population, but what they can do. How do earthworms get here? We shouldn't have earthworms. We didn't have earthworms because when the glaciers did their business across Wisconsin, it scraped the soil away. We didn't have worms. Our worms got brought here. Our earthworms, as you guys might use for fishing bait, got brought here by the Europeans. These guys got brought here about 100 years ago, not even 100 years ago, 80 years ago. Jumping worms. All earthworms can be bad for woods. If you have an infestation of huge amounts of regular European earthworms, they can do the same thing as the jumping worms. The jumping worms are just way more likely for this to happen. They're an invasive that's way more aggressive and way more damaging to our forests. They've been on the scene since about 2013 here in Wisconsin. Like I said, they've been in the United States since like the 20s or 30s. They've been here since 2013 is when they were first found here. They are voracious eaters. So if your forest looks something like this, what should a forest floor have on it generally? Well, good, it should have grasses and stuff, but it should also have the leaves that fell down last year and the year before and the year before that. It should have an organic layer. It should have a healthy, organic, decaying layer. Those worms will completely denude the forest of that. It'll be right down to just bare dirt. And it's pretty striking if you walk through the woods and see this. I mean, it's just, and what actually happens is, and I don't know if you can see it on here, you start to see up like this one. I don't know how easy you can see it there. Let me go back one. What ends up happening is it's almost like gum disease, where the gums do, recede and the roots of the tooth get exposed. The roots of the tree get exposed because all the organic material has just been eaten away. So these things are very, very damaging because now once they do that, not only are they stressing the trees, they've opened up all this ground that no longer has that healthy organic layer. The soil becomes more compacted. Guess what tends to take root in here?
She said garlic mustard.
Oh, garlic, good. Yeah, it could be garlic mustard. Usually not something we want. Not maple trees and other things. A lot of times it's that thing I showed you in the first picture of healthy forests. A lot of times it's that pen sedge will take root because it can tolerate this, pardon my French, but crappy soil. It can do well there versus, what we want growing there, the good plants. So worms are a problem. And other causes are self-inflicted. If you're gonna be planting trees, take the time to really learn how to plant trees, especially if you're gonna be planting large numbers of them. Because you wanna make sure you plant them right. If you plant them too shallow, so that roots are sticking out above the ground, that just makes it more likely for that the roots are gonna dry out, and that tree was probably either gonna be stressed or end up dying. What if you plant it too deep? Well, now the root collar is completely buried under the soil. And the root collar, where you're supposed to plant a tree to at ground level, the root collar is a thickened layer of cells that is designed to withstand microbial action of things in the soil. If you plant it too deep, now it's just the regular stem of the tree is underground. And that stem of the tree doesn't have that special layers of cells. And basically the microbial action will just eat the tree and kill it. You know. Another bad one is if you plant it where the roots, you want the roots nice and facing downward. If you jam it in there so that the roots are jade, now all of a sudden you get a J shape to your roots. And again, not good. Now the roots can start growing not downward, but upward. And then the last one, you got the root collar right even with the ground, or actually slightly above, and nice spread out roots, and we're good. That's a good planted tree. So yeah, make sure if you're gonna be planting trees, especially lots of them, take the time to learn how to do it correctly. Last way here, destructive cutting. You know, and that's why you guys are all here. You don't want to do anything. You know your woods is a long-term investment. This is something you want to cherish for a long time. So you don't want to cut your woods the wrong way, in a way that will damage the woods. That's a good way not to do that is work with a forester and don't rush into a harvest. Always, you know, slow and steady wins the race. So where do you get help? DNR Forest Health people. This is a great website. Go to the DNR website and just type in Forest Health. Everything we talked about tonight will be on there in some way, shape, or form. Except maybe my rotten joke about the moosewood and the dogwood. DNR foresters are a good place to get information. And if we don't know the answers, because we're not forest health specialists, we will point you and get you the information you need or in contact with them. Now, if you have a question, I would start here because our forest health people, they're specialists in this. They get a lot of, they're handling huge areas of geography. And so they get a lot of, you know, they can't answer everybody that has a sick tree. So start with us because we can answer a lot of the questions that you might have. Because we're seeing maybe the same things going on ourselves, or we've heard it from other people. Oh yeah, the ash really looked bad this year. It's not emerald ash borer though. It's probably this cottony ash psyllid. So I would start here, and then maybe we'll put you to the forest health guys, or like I said, just go to the website and you can do a lot of self-investigation. Yard tree questions, good place to go there is UW Extension. Bill would be glad to help you out.
No.
Nope.
The counties, there's always some county staff that can help, especially during the summer. Don't be afraid to give them a call if you have any questions.
Yep. And then the last one, urban trees. If you have questions, we do have urban foresters within the DNR or towns. Every town, or most larger towns, anyways, have a forester or just local arborists. Local tree guys might have an idea about what's going on with your trees. So next steps, walk your property, look for forest health issues. Have a forest management plan that goes through all the presentations we talked about. And yeah, since it's free, ask for professional assistance. We're glad to help. That's why we're here. All right, any questions?
Can you tell a black ash from a green ash?
Or white ashes.
Well, trying to think of a good dogwood by its bark. Really, I would.
Where they grow. Where they.
Well,
Yeah, where they grow, the black ash are gonna have their feet typically in the water, green ash are gonna be kind of more on the edge of the water. And then white ash are typically more upland, not necessarily, I mean, I've seen them all in different places, honestly, but that's a good place to start.
to me, bark. Bark. Green ash don't look anything like bark, black. Green and white look more like
Yeah.
green and black. I would, so, yeah, when we were talking about identifying trees. The only problem around here is, for a lot of people, they can only identify trees when.
Leaves.
When they got leaves on, but unfortunately, they don't have leaves 6 months out of the year. So it's always good to learn what does the bark of the tree look like too, besides just the leaves. So, as far as the ash goes, I tell it by the bark. Because to me, it's just very distinctive looking, green ash versus black ash or white ash.
You see a lot of green ash out in the.
No, there are green ash around, but I think you could only confuse white and green ash from their bark. You could still confuse those two. I don't think you could black ash. There is another way, but unfortunately, I haven't used that way since I was in college, and that's by the bud scar. One has a smiley face, and one is
Straight.
not smiling, it's just a straight face, and I can't remember if the white is that way or the green is that way. The other way with black ash is, look at the buds. The buds of black ash are real chocolate colored. They're real dark brownish black. That would be the best way.
There's a question from someone online about, are there trees that are drought, deer and disease resistant and forest fire resistant? Is there some trees that are better to favor because they're more resistant to some of the things we talked about, or the stressors in general?
Well, deer certainly have their favorites. Like say I was gonna plant some conifers. I wanted to get conifer cover on my property for thermal cover for animals. If my choices were planting white pine. If I was looking for some kind of conifer to plant there, I would lean heavy, and maybe jump in on this too. I would lean heavy towards spruce, white spruce. Because they're way less likely to browse white spruce than something like white pine or even balsam fir. Red pine,
Yeah, spruces are pretty solid, like if you just need to occupy a site with something green, spruce is pretty safe bet, goes fast.
and it doesn't get brown. That's like a starvation food. They wouldn't eat that unless they all look their head.
What's a good broadleaf tree, deciduous tree that
Oh my god.
sugar maple?
Well, sugar maple is the candy. I mean, that would be like
Deer
your
love-
candy. That's the problem. I mean, deer are so generalists. They have their favorites. I'm just trying to think, what would be,
Ash was good until EAV showed up, otherwise,
yeah,
I mean, bass.
but they browse ash too. They'll browse basswood.
Yeah,
Red maple?
It's hard to get around deer. If you got a high deer population, I don't have a good answer there. I don't know that.
How about disease resistance, or is there some that have fewer diseases we have to worry about? Is that where sugar maple comes
I
in?
think sugar maple pretty hardy as far as
Yeah,
disease, and it's also very good.
because these and insects,
Compartmentalizing wounds.
unless we get the longhorn, or no, what is it? The maple.
Asian one.
Maple borer or something. There's something coming out there. Not here. It's, yeah, I don't want to scare you. These guys are gonna have nightmares. No,
Tree limit.
what was your question about that? The maple?
Broadleaf.
No.
Yeah, you said spruce is a good,
Age
that's a good solid tree that's
Yeah.
fewer diseases and things are gonna eat it. What's a?
Oh, yeah, on the disease front.
Yeah.
Yeah, maple would be a really good choice. Again, with pines, red pine, for us, red pine is pretty bulletproof. There really isn't anything that gets red pine much. White pine, unfortunately, if you got blister rust in your area, that can be a problem. So if you're choosing pines, I just love white pine way better than red pine, so I might take the chance. It depends what your objectives are again, what you're going for. But otherwise, with broadleaves, I don't have a good answer for a deer resistant one there. Cause I've seen them browse just about everything.
Are they doing any research on, or any thought about what the replanting those sites, those black ash sites, the swamp white oak, a good alternative?
Yeah, if you can start underplanting things like swamp white oak. And right now, because of this ash psyllid that is kind of defoliating and the trees are basically half dying. The canopies, it's much more open in those stands now. So yeah, things like silver maple. Which is a very fast growing maple, weak wooded, not the best form, but it would occupy the site as a tree. So you got silver maple, you got swamp white oak. You got hackberry could be a choice. Would be another one.
Or you looking just strictly for broadleaf? I mean.
Oh, tamarack, black spruce,
River birch?
river birch, yep. Even yellow birch can tolerate fairly wet soils,
Yeah. Especially on the perimeter and the.
perimeters and things, yep. Yeah, and they are doing trials and trying different underplantings and trying, yeah, there's a lot of that going on because.
Kentucky coffee.
Yeah. Any other questions? Otherwise, I got a last second quiz for you. Does anybody recognize that?
That's something to do with people?
I'll pass it around.
I have no idea.
That's not a giant black nut, is it? You have black knot? You have black knot here?
Oh yeah, a lot of black nut on their cherry.
Makes a good tea.
Yeah.
If you can, makes good tea.
Yeah. Some people said it makes really good tea that'll help you
Antioxidants, oh yeah, it's like a power drink.
cure diseases, fight off cancer.
I can't.
It forms sort of amorphous blobs, especially on birch trees. Sometimes it's referred to as bear shit on birch, because it's a real black growth on birch trees. That's called chaga. You may have heard of it because it is pretty common as a medicinal type thing in some circles. It's not uncommon. It's not the black that you see there that's real woody. The inside of it is more of a tan cream color. And that's what you take that, you grind it up and you make it.
Grind it or cut it into chunks and.
Yep, yeah, you really want what's inside it, that black part.
Light brown color.
Okay, otherwise, that's all I got for you.
That's CHAG.
CHAGA, yep, chaga. It's a pretty common fungus here on our birch tree.
Especially the yellow bird.
White too, yellow and white, that came off the white, yep. Yellow, any of the birches. It will grow on other trees, but very seldom, more on the birch.